maybe that's it. Maybe you'll never pin it down. But having said that, what is what is the role of emotion then in these different cultures and in your work? What's the kind of central question you're asking with your work when it comes to the different scientific cultures and then specifically emotion?
Yeah. So the way I like to think about emotion is emotion as meaning making, emotion as kind of like the part of the embodied experience of assigning meaning to things in the world. So
Hmm.
so for me, emotions is something that is learned through life. Like you learn to experience certain emotions or certain situations because that is what the cultures and the experiences that you have had through life have taught you. Uh, so the way that this connects is that like emotion in a way is at the center of how we give meaning to things, how we value things. Um, and so like I don't want to get like too technical, but emotion in a way works like a compass or as a
Hmm.
as a motivator or something that like pushes us towards certain other things or away from certain others. It like guides us through the world and allows us to interpret certain things or certain way or certain things. It's like it gives signals to the body to act in certain ways and to pay attention to certain things in the world and discard others. So yeah, it's like an internal barometer that's always on. Like there's no
Right.
such
Yeah.
thing as
Yeah.
like being unemotional. This is like a story that we like to tell ourselves, and the scientists love that. It's like
Which science loves to tell that story,
they love
right?
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it's like there's a long history of like rationalism and like how it came out in the 19th
Yeah.
century,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
18th, 19th century, and how this idea came about of the rational self. And we can trace it all the way back to like Plato, and even before that, to the idea of the chariot being led by the horses and pulling in certain directions, all that stuff. So
Right.
there's
Right.
like a
Right.
long history of especially in Western thought of rationality being neutral to emotionality of to affect. um and and yeah, the way I think about it is that like there's emotion in absolutely every single aspect of our lived experience. There's emotion guiding us uh through life. It's something that like moves us through the world and like we allows us to assign meaning to things. So going back to the question that you had earlier on about talking about scientists, I'm actually really interested in that question about like how do scientists like land up in a scientific career. Like I know that like there's a motivation to like learn new things and push boundaries and like uh, contribute to the scientific endeavor and create new scientific knowledge and like all this stuff. But there's always like a personal like story behind that. There's always like I
Hmm.
like my parents taught me something, or like my teachers encouraged me, or like I read this book that like really moved me, and so there's always like a gut motivation that's moving people through the world and helping them make the decisions that lead them to become scientists. uh, and the same with like communicators are like in science communication because they believe in science in a certain way and they think that they can contribute in a certain way to certain things. And I'm very interested in that. I'm very interested in like thinking about what are the what are the ways that people who end up in science communication experience emotion around science, which emotions are valid and which emotions are not valid. So something that I picked up in my latest study that came out a couple days ago, links in the show notes. Uh,
Yep. Absolutely.
I will, I will. So like a how you call it, like when um, you plugged
You
in
plugged it.
like your stuff.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
a nice
yeah.
plug. Good job.
No, really. Like one of the things that I observed in my conversations with scientists, with science communicators, and especially science communicators that do research 50% of the time, 50% of the time is dedicated to like communicating science, is that the norms of like what what are the expectations, how are they expected to communicate, what kind of like tones and affective like notes and which emotions is very limiting. So of course they can talk about wonder and they talk about curiosity and they can talk about certain, but hope maybe, but things like anger or sadness or like joy or like intense expression of emotions are like very discouraged, and not just by their
Hmm.
peers, but like the institutional setup that you're supposed to write in like neutral language, or you're supposed to write in
Yeah.
like non-affective tones, and so like yeah, so certain like our cultures of science communication kind of like encourage certain emotional tones and discourage others. And I'm interested in that, like in which of these cultures that I was talking about, what are those affective tones of each of these, which ones are discouraged, which are encouraged, how when like something is encouraged, like how do we express it, how do we talk about this. Yeah, like this is where I think there's a lot of opportunity for research, but also for improving communication practices, because um,
Hmm.
there's a lot of like with the state of the world, there's a lot of anger out there. Um,
Yeah. Fear.
Fear, anger, frustration, like just emotions that you would not normally consider as good affective registers for talking about science. Like we usually talk about like these
Hmm.
excitement or discover, like wonders, these things. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we are, I think that we are in a way doing a disservice to not tapping into those emotions, like not just like this is like, again, we're talking about generalizations. There are scientist communicators that are tapping into those things, but like we are losing in a way the attention of a lot of publics, because other influencers, podcasters, other people are really tapping into those fears and those angers and those, and that's what you see in populist backlashes, that's what you see in like rise of fascist movements, that's
Hmm.
what you see in like inequality, that's what you see like. So I'm interested in talking about these things in order to encourage people to be more like open and flexible and like more kind of
Hmm.
explore these effective
To
registers.
use the whole range
Yep.
of emotion that we have available to us, right? Like I do workshops on science communication, science writing with grad students, and I always say this, like, because I feel like science communication, I'm speaking to scientists that want to get their message out, right? And I'm like, our default is always humor, right? Like it's always happy, it's humor. Like if we can be funny, then people will, right? And it's like, sure, that's great. That's one way to do it. But if you look at, like you just said, all of these movements that we could say that we would, as scientists and science communicators, say these are maybe like anti-science or antithetical to what we're trying to do, populist movements, anti-science movements, whatever that means, those people are tapping into some of the strongest human emotions we have: fear, anger, frustration, all this stuff. And I would say they're doing it obviously for bad. The outcomes are bad for society, for people, for everything, right? But it's effective. It's very effective communication, right? Those people are really good storytellers. They're really effective communicators. So I agree with you that there's a place to be using these. It's like, why paint with only three colors, when you have a whole spectrum of colors, right? So use all the colors that are available to you.